it's Kwana back again with another review. Hope you guys are doing awesome. So over the holiday, I got a chance to binge watch Wednesday, which is the Netflix series based on the character of Wednesday Addams from the Addams Family comic strips and TV shows and movies and everything. And if you are a 80s baby, 90s teen like me, and you loved the 90s films, I'm gonna tell you why you should definitely check out Wednesday. You might be a little skeptical, but I'm hopefully going to get you off the fence. But before we get started, please do me a favor and click the subscribe button. I promise you won't regret it. You probably need to diversify a little bit your YouTube algorithm and see someone who thinks maybe a little bit closer to how you think, or at least maybe gives you some interesting perspectives. And I am someone who is a self-proclaimed nerd, but I'm also a mom and a teacher, and this is my passion. So I hope that you love movies and television shows as much as I do. So let's get into Wednesday and why I enjoyed it so much. All right, so Wednesday, which is executive produced by Tim Burton, and he directed the first 4 episodes, centers around the character of Wednesday Addams, who is playing a teenager, 16, 17-year-old version of herself, and she gets sent away to the Nevermore Academy, which is a boarding school for outcasted kids. The series stars Catherine Zeta-Jones as Morticia Addams, Luis Guzman as Gomez Addams. It has Fred Armisen as Uncle Fester, and it features Christina Ricci, who was iconic in the role of Wednesday Addams in both the Addams Family and the Addams Family Values from the 90s, playing a new character. And it has a ton of great young actors as well playing the other students in this film, or in this series. Jenna Ortega, who stars as Wednesday, let's talk a little bit about her because she is phenomenal, taking on such an iconic role. I definitely think Christina Ricci is the most iconic version of Wednesday Addams. I mean, people have her face literally etched on their bodies. That's how iconic her adaptation and her portrayal of Wednesday was. But she's definitely playing the child and preteen version of Wednesday, and Jenna Ortega's version of Wednesday is if Wednesday had aged up about 3 or 4 more years, if she was growing up in the 21st century. And she does such a good job of embodying that kind of introverted, outcast, quirky, spooky, analytical, sarcastic wit and humor that we have come to know and love from Wednesday. And she's just simply phenomenal and definitely shines in this role. I'm not going to dig too much into the overarching plot, but just suffice it to say that as she gets sent to this boarding school because of her Wednesday Addams-esque deeds and actions in the normal world, she uncovers a mystery that surrounds her family and puts the whole entire school in danger, and she is the only one who can possibly stop it. It feels a lot like the reboots that are popularized from CW, like Riverdale, but I think a little bit more closely into like an in-between between Sabrina's and the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina and Riverdale. This kind of like, I feel like, lens in the middle. There's definitely some gore, there's definitely some blood and guts, but it doesn't have a whole lot of kind of like adult humor. You don't have to really worry about, like it being too adult. It definitely lends in this area of everyone feeling like an appropriately aged individual on this show. But the show is just a lot of fun to watch as well. I was so glad to see Christina Ricci in this, and I really was kind of wishing that they had brought back some of the other actors to maybe either reprise roles or to play new characters. I think that would have been very ironic. And it felt like they did use a couple of people. Let me know down below in the comments if you spotted anyone, if you had a chance to watch it and you spotted anyone who showed up in the film, because there's a couple of people that I think upon a second watch I'm going to notice, but I really was so engrossed in the plot and trying to kind of get a feel for what was going on that I didn't really notice too much of those things. Let's talk about some of the other cast, because I definitely think that Jenna Ortega is a standout. I think Christina Ricci is great. For a long time, she was really underutilized in Hollywood, and then we kind of saw a resurgence in her acting around the time that she made that independent film called Black Snake Moan with Samuel L. Jackson, which was kind of uncomfortable to watch, just simply because I think we were so used to seeing Christina Ricci as these younger characters that she played in the 90s, which, let's just face it, Christina Ricci really was that girl in the 90s. I mean, you got Addams Family, you've got Casper, you've got the coming of age movie Now and Then, you've got Mermaids, another coming of age movie that paired her with Winona Ryder. And so she did a lot of film and was really great, was a really great young actress in the 90s. And then went a long stretch without being in anything. And then was in episodes of like Grey's Anatomy and some dramas, and really kind of stretching her acting chops. And so it was lovely to see her in this. I thought she did a good job. Her character is very opposite of the character that she played as Wednesday, and I think that was very smart not to cast her too closely aligned to her Wednesday character, because it really allowed Jenna's character to shine. Some of the acting choices. Oh, I forgot to mention that Gwendolyn Christie is in this, and those of you who watch Game of Thrones will know her as Brienne the Beautiful. She was phenomenal. She plays the headmistress of the school. She was really good in there. I really did wish they had done a little bit more with her wardrobe in this, but I really enjoyed her character, and she's just someone who, you see her on the screen, and I don't know if it's just her height, her beauty, her face, but she just is so captivating to watch on screen. It was really nice to see her in this role as well. Some of the more iconic characters from the Addams family, you have Gomez Addams, probably best portrayed by Raul Julia, may he rest in peace, and now here played by Luis Guzman. I know that because I'm familiar with both the original comic strip and also with the like 1950s or 60s adaptation. I'm very well aware that like this version of Gomez is probably more closely aligned to the comic. However, I think that Raul Julia played him with such finesse and such suavite that it was a little bit awkward seeing Luis Guzman, because he was still trying to, I think, channel that version of him, and he doesn't come off as suave. And it just kind of comes off as I hate to use this word, a simp. He felt like he is a simp. He is a simp for Morticia, but I think where Raul Julia's portrayal of Gomez was more like in control of his sexuality and like wooing Morticia, it feels a little awkward here. Catherine Zeta-Jones, on the other hand, she does a good job of kind of channeling Morticia. It doesn't feel like a carbon copy of Angelica Houston, and I think that because they really deal with and decide to dive into like the trope of the mother-daughter friction that kind of shows up for girls sometimes in their teen years, it's a very different take on Morticia, and it was an interesting choice. I think because they lean so heavily into that trope, and instead of focusing so closely on like the romantic aspects of her and Gomez's relationship, it allowed me to not really nitpick over the ways in which she does not remind me of Angelica Houston. I do think however, tonally, especially being that this is a Tim Burton produced project, I felt like the color palette, they wanted to lean into the idea of, and really embrace, because he's gotten a lot of backlash, embrace the Latine, well, that's a little, we're going to talk about that, the Latineity of the characters, that they didn't go so pale as they could have. But I felt like for Morticia, because she's not necessarily the one who is coming from that heritage that we know of, I would have leaned more heavily in like making her very pale and making her very like quiet and waif-like a little bit. And so that was a little bit of a different choice, but I did like Catherine Zeta-Jones' portrayal of Morticia, and I thought it worked really well. The character of Pugsley doesn't feature as heavily in this rendition of the show, but The actor who plays Pugsley does a competent job. It's a little bit of a different take on Pugsley. When we see Pugsley in the Addams Family and the Addams Family Values, he is enamored with Uncle Fester, and his look is mimicking Uncle Fester's look a bit more. This Pugsley is more mimicking Gomez's look, which I thought was really nice. But I think that even for the few moments that we had him on the screen, then I would have maybe made the choice to align him more with Gomez's character, because then we would have seen Morticia kind of focusing more on Wednesday and the ways in which they were similar, Pugsley and more aligned with Gomez and the ways in which they were similar. And I just felt like they could have leaned a little bit more heavily into that, but not bad at all. Then we have Fred Armisen as Uncle Fester. This version of Uncle Fester is much more seemingly knowledgeable about his misdeeds and intentional with his misdeeds, which is a different look from Uncle Fester that we've seen in the past. And so the appearance differences between the traditional Christopher Lloyd version of Uncle Fester versus this Uncle Fester can kind of be accounted, in my opinion, from those decisions to make, Uncle Fester kind of a thief and a burglar and someone who is like kind of almost like a spy kind of character, versus the Uncle Fester of the 90s movies, who's kind of bumbling and dumb, and his weight kind of is stereotypical of those ideas. And so I think that it was probably very intentional to go with someone with a comedic background like Fred Armisen, but someone who differently kind of embodies the character a little bit differently, because that way you're not kind of leaning into those tropes. So it was an interesting choice. I thought that his relationship with Wednesday was interesting. I think they could have leaned a little bit more heavily into the idea of him being kind of like this long lost uncle and someone who's like a mentor for Wednesday. They kind of tease that a little bit, but really this Wednesday is a lone wolf and doesn't lean as heavily into her family as perhaps Wednesdays of the past. So that was an interesting thing. We also see the presence of Thing. Thing shows up in this, and he's there with Wednesday, and we love Thing. And so it was great to see Thing return to this version of the show. Again, the show deals with Wednesday attempting to solve this mystery that surrounds her family and possibly can bring down the show. There's been some murders going on, and she's trying to get her father's name cleared. And I don't want to spoil any of that for you, but I think the show was just very enjoyable, had some good laughs, really good chemistry, really good coming of age story around Wednesday and around the idea of like still being true to who she is, but perhaps letting people in and making friends. There's a character relationship between her and the roommate that she makes named Enid that's really sweet to watch. The character of Enid really kind of made me think of a cross between Luna Lovegood from Harry Potter and she kind of put me in the mind of that, of like Luna Lovegood mixed with like a Ron Weasley. If like Luna and Ron had a baby, that would be Enid. And her character was really enjoyable as well. Wednesday gets put in some love triangles. It's really an interesting show to watch. I liked it a whole lot better. I felt like the story was a lot tighter than The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina and, of course, all of Riverdale. So I think that the story itself was really well done. There were a couple of moments here and there where I felt like they had addressed one character development, and as is a coming of age trope, the character falls back into the same ways of being and hasn't really learned a lesson until they get to the very end of the series, even though the lesson kind of shows up in episode like 4, and it's like hitting her on the head of like, learn this lesson. Like, look out for this lesson. Here's the lesson. I've learned the lesson. And then in episode 6, I've not learned that lesson at all. I'm going to go back and do the exact same thing that I did earlier. To heck with character growth and the development. And then, okay, I'll learn the lesson again by the time we get to the end. And aside from little things like that, I really enjoyed this show. And I think that you will too, especially if you liked Addams Family and Addams Family Values. I definitely think that this version is really better than those stop motion animations by DreamWorks, I think, or Illumination. Or at least for me, those characters were just like so different to kind of look at. Maybe and some people get really weirded out with stop motion, and so that was a little bit more uncomfortable to watch. This is a joy to watch, a delight to see. It feels like it feels like a resurgence of like that Harry Potter boarding school mysticism, and I really hope that they develop the show into future seasons. Let me know down below in the comments if you have had an opportunity to watch Wednesday. Did you love it? Did you like it? I'm going to give Wednesday a good old solid A, an A grade, which has not happened in a little while, so I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I suspect that this has a lot of rewatchability, which is all the better. So check it out. Come back, let me know what you thought, and perhaps we'll go live and talk about it later. Until the next video, guys. Toodles!